I'm Michelle with the Recipe Bandit, and today we're going to be making my mother-in-law's famous bite-sized sausage rolls. This is one of those recipes that I love this. We have always had this, and it's always something that seems really fancy, but is really, really easy. We like to make recipes that you can make with stuff that you have in the cupboard or stuff that's accessible to you, and this is one of those. Everybody seems to love these, and they don't have a lot of ingredients. You can see what I have laid out here, not very much. We have package of puff pastry sheets. There's 2 sheets. I've thawed them. You buy them frozen in the freezer section. I put them in the refrigerator overnight so they are thawed. I also have some Jimmy Dean's pork sausage. This is going to be our sausage filling. Also thawed, bought that. Had it in the freezer and thawed it out. We have some cocktail sauce that we use for dipping the final product. It doesn't matter what kind of cocktail sauce. It doesn't matter if you want to use something else, but they pair really well with this. In addition, I have an egg, which we are going to use when we bake the sausage rolls to make them golden brown. I have a little dish of water so that we can seal them in the puff pastry. And I have got some flour so that when I can roll it out, it won't stick to my counter. We are going to preheat the oven to 425 degrees before we get started, and then I'm going to get things going. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get started with one of these sheets of puff pastry. My mother-in-law used to say that you had to keep them in the fridge in between rolling them, but I don't necessarily think that that's necessary. They behave pretty well. They are kind of sticky though, so you will want to put some flour out, spread it around so that it doesn't stick to whatever surface you are rolling on. And you will need a rolling pan. Get rid of these little papers. Now, when you get it out of the package, it's little. It's, kind of a 9x9 square, which is fine, but we don't want it this thick. You don't want it to be super thick. So we're going to use a rolling pin, and we're just going to make it a little thinner. Roll it kind of in each direction a couple of times, but then come back, and you want to have a longer edge so that it's more not so 9x9 anymore and more like a rectangle. Doesn't have to be super thin. You're looking for this kind of rectangle shape now. Once you have it a rectangle, you're going to take a knife and just cut it right up the middle. You will do this for each sheet. I like to just kind of flip them over once I have them cut. This is going to be 2 separate rolls. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Jimmy Dean's sausage, move that just up out of the way for just right now, and using a big knife, I'm going to cut it in half this way, set half of it aside, take it out of the packaging, and then we're going to cut it in half again. So you're going to make 4 of these long tubes. So I'm going to set this across, and I'll show you what I mean by 4. So here's my initial sheet of puff pastry, and I've cut it into 2. I've taken my sausage and divided it into 4. So 1, 2, and the other one we haven't cut yet. So with this quarter, we're just going to kind of take it and make an even layer down the middle of this line, this little strip of puff pastry. You just kind of want it to be somewhat even. It's really not that hard to do, obviously. So if it looks a little sparse like it did on this end here, and we'll just move a little bit up, kind of push it all together. That looks pretty good. We are going to go ahead and do the same with the other. I like to do these 2 at a time, 1 piece of puff pastry and half of the sausage at a time, just because that way I can get them going in the oven. It does make quite a few of these little sausage rolls, and they need about 15 minutes in the oven to cook. So once you get the sausage kind of all evenly dispersed up your puff pastry in a nice little line, a lot here and not a lot here. All right. I'm going to just wash my hands. All right. So I gave my hands a quick wash so that I could show you a little better. All right. So this is how this looks now. You have these 2 little long rectangles with sausage up the middle. This is where we're going to bring in the water. The water, just going to use a little brush along the side here. One side, don't have to do both, one of the long sides, because we're going to roll this puff pastry over the sausage and make it into a little tube. So we'll start with the first one here. All we're going to do is just roll this over. You're going to have the puff pastry line up with the other side, keeping the sausage kind of in the middle so that your edges match like this. I like to kind of use my fingers to push the wet parts of the puff pastry down together and then make this a little even more roll up the middle here so that you have a roll now that looks like this. All right, so I'm going to do the same with this one. Just give it a little brush with some water. You don't need a whole lot. And then take your edge, fold it over so that these edges alongside here match again. And I kind of push with my knuckles so that they stick together, and then use my thumbs to make this kind of a nice roll. Okay, so now I have 2 rolls that look like this. I don't necessarily want all of this extra pastry on this side where I've joined them. You only need about a half of an inch. So this is where I take the knife and I just trim so that we have less of it. You can leave it on there if you want, but then they're just really doughy and you don't really need that. So I trim these off of here, both sides, throw it away. Then take a fork and just crimp like you would on a pie along the 1/2 inch edge that you kept. This will make sure that they stay nice and sealed, gives the sausage a little more foundation, and the little rolls stay together really nicely. And when you're done, this is what it looks like. It's got little crimped edges, and they're just little tubes. We're going to cut them in just a minute. Let me just crimp this other one up here. Now the next step is going to be putting them onto 2 baking sheets. 2 baking sheets that you've either lined with a silicone pad or parchment paper or sprayed with cooking spray. Whatever you have, it doesn't matter. So we have our 2 little rolls here. All right, I think you guys can both see them. And I have prepared 2 pans already, so we'll just use one. Now we're going to take this same knife that we had and we're going to cut these into, I don't know, about a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch little guys, just like this. And these we're going to lay onto our prepared cooking sheet. I have the oven preheated to 425. These are going to go in when we're ready to cook them for about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to cut them all really quick, and they're really quick to cut. Every so often I just take them, put them on the baking sheet. When I'm putting them on this baking sheet, I'm leaving just a little bit of room between them. And the reason why is because they will spread. They do grow a little bit when you bake them. So let me get this entire first roll on here. It doesn't matter if some of the sausage pokes out on either side a little bit. I'll show you how they look on the baking sheet. I'm just spacing them out a little bit since it turns out that I put them a little close, but like I said, it doesn't really matter. They won't stick together if they touch when you cook them, but you do want to let them have a little bit of room to spread. So this here is how they look. So our next step is going to be to paint them with a little bit of a beaten egg. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let me get that ready. Okay, so now we have an egg. Just going to crack it into a bowl, and with the same fork that we used earlier, we're just going to kind of beat it a little bit. It doesn't have to be fancy or anything. You just really want it beaten together. Use the same brush that you did for the water, and then all you're going to do that here so you can see a little better is we're just going to paint them. This just going to make them nice and brown while they bake. Puff pastry really likes an egg wash, and they're really pretty when you put the egg wash on them. You don't have to, of course, but honestly, it doesn't take very much longer, and I think it's worth it. All right, I honestly think that is the longest part of this whole recipe, is painting these things with an egg wash. But anyway, they are ready. I'm going to put them in the oven. The oven is preheated, 425 degrees, and they're going to be in here for 15 minutes. Now, in the meantime, while those ones are cooking, go ahead and make your second batch. Use your final sheet of puff pastry, the rest of your pork sausage, and set aside your water and your egg wash until you're ready. And get that second set ready to go. Out of the oven, these are golden and delicious. Who wouldn't want to eat these? You want to let them cool on a baking rack, this, before you try to eat them. They're delicious, but they will burn your mouth. Then, when you're ready to serve them, put them onto a platter, pour a little cocktail sauce in a little bowl for dipping, and watch them disappear. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you like us, please like and subscribe so that you don't miss anything new. And we'll be back next week with another video. Thanks so much.